Okay. All right. Book club. What chapter is this? 14. Chapter 14? Yeah.
How many chapters are there total?
20.
Oh, we're almost done.
Yep.
Mhm.
In last chapter, we witnessed a murder. A murder in the... I don't know what room it was. In the something with a knife.
Murder!
Murder.
Crime of
Okay.
passion.
Oh, passion. Or agony.
There's
I'm not...
both.
Probably. Passionate agony. Okay. Okay. I think it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, let me move that forward. Okay. Chapter 14. At 9 o'clock the next morning, his servant came in with a cup of chocolate on a tray and opened the shutters. Dorian was sleeping quite peacefully, lying on his right side, with one hand underneath his cheek. He looked like a boy who had been tired out with play or study. The man had to touch him twice on the shoulder before he woke, and as he opened his eyes, a faint smile across his lips, passed across his lips, as though he had been lost in some delightful dream. Yet he had not dreamed at all. His night had been untroubled by any images of pleasure or of pain. But youth smiles without any reason. It is one of its chiefest charms. He turned round, and leaning upon his elbow, began to sip his chocolate. The mellow November sun came streaming into the room. The sky was bright, and there was a genial warmth in the air. It was almost like a morning in May. Gradually, the events of the preceding night crept with silent, blood-stained feet into his brain and reconstructed themselves there with terrible distinctness. He winced at the memory of all that he had suffered, and for a moment the same curious feeling of loathing for Basil Hallward that had made him kill him as he sat in the chair came back to him, and he grew cold with passion. The dead man was still sitting there, too, and in the sunlight now. How horrible that was! Such hideous things were for the darkness, not for the day. That's what he thinks about when
Mhm.
the dead body is still there. Oh my goodness.
That's kind of fucked up.
That's in
Yeah.
many ways. In many ways.
Sounds
First,
like a very fashionable man. Ugh, you don't do this around this season.
yeah. How how dare Howard's dead body be present in the day? Ugh. He felt that if he brooded on what he had gone through, he would sicken or grow mad. Oh, sorry to break it to you, but I think you're already mad. There were sins whose fascination was more in the memory than in doing of them. Strange strange triumphs that gratified the pride more than the passions, and gave to the intellect a quickened sense of joy greater than any joy they brought, or could ever bring, to the senses. But this was not one of them. It was a thing to be driven out of the mind, to be drugged with poppies, to be strangled lest it might strangle one's itself. When the half hour struck, he passed his hand across his forehead, and then got up hastily and dressed himself with even more than his usual care, giving good detail of attention to the choice of his necktie and scarf pin, and changing his rings more than once. He spent a long time over breakfast, tasting the various dishes, talking to his valet about some new liveries that he was thinking of getting made for the servants at Selby, and going through his correspondence. At some of the letters he smiled. 3 of them bored him. One he read several times over, then tore up with a slight look of annoyance on his face. Oh. The
Ugh.
that awful thing, a woman's memory, as Lord Henry had once said. After he had drunk his cup of black coffee, he wiped his lips slowly with a napkin and mentioned to his servant to wait, and going over to the table, sat down and wrote 2 letters. One he put in his pocket, the other he handed to the valet. Take this round to 152 Hertford Street, Francis, and if Mr. Campbell is out of town, get his address. As soon as he was alone, he lit a cigarette and began stretching upon a piece of paper. Sketching upon a piece of paper. Drawing first flowers and bits of architecture, and then human faces. Suddenly, he remarked that every face that he drew seemed to have a fantastic likeness to Basil Hallward. He frowned, and getting up, went over to the bookcase and took out a volume at hazard. He was determined that he would not think about what had happened until it became absolutely necessary that he should do so. When he had stretched himself on the sofa, he looked at the title page of the book. It was Gautier's Aimant et Camus. What? How do you say that, Kelly?
I think you said it okay.
Okay. Charpentiers. Charpentiers. Yeah. Charpentier's Japanese paper edition. With the, was it Jacques Mark?
Jacques Mark?
Jacques Mark, yeah. Jacques Mark etching. The binding was of citron green leather, with a design of gilt trellis work and dotted pomegranates. It had been given to him by Adrian Singleton. As he turned over the pages, his eye fell on the poem about the land of Lacenaire. Yeah, Lacenaire. The cold yellow hand du souplesse encore mal lavé. Lavé?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Lavé?
Yeah.
Lavé.
With its downy red hairs and its, was it Doigues de Fan?
Doigt de Faune.
He glanced at his own white taper fingers, shuddering slightly in spite of himself, and passed on, till he came to those lovely stanza upon Venice. I'm not reading any of that.
Okay.
Haley, read it.
You read it. Yeah.
Sur une grande chromatique, la scène des pères Chrysler, l'avenue de l'Adriatique. Sort de lui son corps rose et blanc. Les dômes sur l'azur des ondes, suivant la phrase per contre, s'enflant comme des gorges rondes qui se lèvent en soupir d'amour. Les cuivres abordent et me déposent. Jetant son amarre au pilier, devant une façade ronde, sur le marbre, dans escalier.
How exquisite they were! As one read them, one seemed to be floating down the green waterways of the pink and pearl city, seated in a black gondola with silver prow and trailing curtains. The mere lines looked to him like those straight lines of turquoise blue that followed one as one pushes out to the Lido. The sudden flashes of color reminded him of the gleam of the opal and iris-throated birds that flutter around the tall honeycombed campanile, or stalk with such stately grace through the dim, dust-stained arcades. Leaning back with half-closed eyes, he kept saying over and over to himself, okay, you're up.
Devant une façade rose, sur le marbre dans escalier.
The whole of Venice was in those 2 lines. He remembered the autumn that he had He remembered the autumn that he had passed there, and a wonderful love that had stirred him to mad delightful follies. There was romance in every place, but Bernice, like Oxford, had kept the background for romance, and to the true romantic, background was everything, or almost everything. Basil had been with him part of the time, and had gone wild over Tintoret. Tintoret?
I have no idea.
I don't know what that is. Okay. Poor Basil. What a horrible way for a man to die. What? You're the one that killed him? What do you mean a horrible... Oh. He sighed and took up the volume again, and tried to forget. He read of the swallows that fly in and out of the little cafe at Smyrna. Wait, Smyrna? Yeah, Smyrna? Smyrna?
Sounds right.
Okay, yeah. Where the Hajids sit counting their amber beads, and the turbaned merchants smoke their long tasseled pipes and talk gravely to each other. He read of the obelisk in the Place de la Concorde, that weeps tears of granite in its lonely sunless exile, and longs to be back by the hot lotus-covered Nile, where there are sphinxes and rose-red ibises, and white vultures with gilded claws, and crocodiles with small barrel eyes that crawl over the green steaming mud. He began to brood over those verses which, drawing music from kiss-stained marble, tell of that curious statue that Gautier compares to a contralto voice, the Monstre Charmant. Charmant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly. Yeah.
That couches in the what? The porphyry? Porphyry? I've never seen
Yeah,
that
it
word.
sounds like porphyry sounds right.
Right? Okay. In the porphyry room of the Louvre. But after a time, the book fell from his hand. He grew nervous, and a horrible fit of terror came over him. What if Abel Campbell should be out of England? Days would elapse before he could come back. Perhaps he might refuse to come. What could he do then? Every moment was of vital importance. They had been great friends once, 5 years before, almost inseparable indeed. Then the intimacy had come suddenly to an end. When they met in society now, it was only Dorian Gray who smiled. Alan Campbell never did. He was an extremely clever young man, though he had no real appreciation for the visible arts, and whatever little sense of the beauty of poetry he had possessed, he had granted entirely from Dorian. His dominant intellectual passion was for science. At Cambridge, he had spent a great deal of his time working in the laboratory, and had taken a good class in natural science tripos of his year. Indeed, he was still devoted to the study of chemistry, and had a laboratory of his own in which he used to shut himself up all day long, greatly to the annoyance of his mother, who had set her heart on his studying for Parliament, and had a vague idea that a chemist was a person who made up prescriptions. He was an excellent musician, however, as well, and played both the violin and the piano better than most amateurs. In fact, it was music that had first brought him and Dorian Gray together. Music and that indefinable attraction that Dorian seemed to be able to exercise whenever he wished, and indeed exercise often without being conscious of it. They had met at Lady Berkshire's the night that Rubinstein played there, and after that used to be always seen together at the opera and wherever good music was going on. For 18 months their intimacy lasted. Campbell was always either at Selby Royal or in Grosvenor Square. To him, as to many others, Dorian Gray was the type of everything that is wonderful and fascinating in life. Whether or not a quarrel had taken place between them, no one ever knew. But suddenly, people remarked that they scarcely spoke when they met, and that Campbell seemed always to go away early from any party at which Dorian Gray was present. He had changed, too, was strangely melancholy at times, appeared almost to dislike hearing music, and would never himself play, giving as his excuse, when he was called upon, that he was so absorbed in science that he had no time left in which to practice. And this was certainly true. Every day he seemed to become more interested in biology, and his name appeared once or twice in some of the scientific reviews in connection with certain curious experiments. This was the man Dorian Gray was waiting for. Every second he kept glancing at the clock. As the minutes went by, he became horribly agitated. At last he got up and began to pace up and down the room, looking like a beautiful caged thing. He took long, stealthy strides. His hands were curiously cold. The suspense became unbearable. Time seemed to him to be crawling with feet of lead, while he, by monstrous winds, was being swept towards the jagged edge of some black cleft of precipice. He knew what was waiting for him there, saw it, indeed, and shuddering, crushed with dank hands his burning lids, as though he would have robbed the very brain of sight, and had driven the eyeballs back into their cave. It was useless. The brain had its own food on which it battened, and the imagination, made grotesque by terror, twisted and distorted as a living thing by pain, danced like some foul puppet on a stand and grinned through moving masks. Then, suddenly, time stopped for him. Yes, that blind, slow-breathing thing crawled no more, and horrible thoughts, time being dead, raced numbly on in front, and dragged a hideous future from its grave, and showed it to him. He stared at it. Its very horror made him stone. At last the door opened, and his servant entered. He turned glazed eyes upon him.
Mr. Campbell, sir,
said the man. A sigh of relief broke from his parched lips, and the color came back to his cheeks. Ask him to come in at once, Francis. He left. He felt that he was himself again. His mood of cowardice had passed away. The man bowed and retired. In a few moments, Alan Campbell walked in, looking very stern and rather pale, his pallor being intensified by his coal-black hair and dark eyebrows. Alan, this is kind of you. I thank you for coming.
I had intended never to enter your house again, but you said it was a matter of life and death.
His voice was hard and cold. He spoke with slow deliberation. There was a look of contempt in the steady, searching gaze that he turned on Dorian. He kept his hands in the pockets of his astrakhan? Yeah. Of his astrakhan coat, and seemed not to have noticed the gesture with which he had been greeted. Yes, it is a matter of life and death, Alan, and to more than one person. Sit down. Campbell took a chair by the table, and Dorian sat opposite to him. The two men's eyes met. In Dorian's there was infinite pity. He knew that what he was going to do was dreadful. After a strained moment of silence, he leaned across and said very quietly, but watching the effect of each word upon the face of him he had sent for. Alan, in a locked room at the top of this house, a room to which nobody but myself has access, a dead man is seated at the table. He has been dead 10 hours now. Don't stir. Don't look at me like that. Who the man is, why he died, how he died, are matters that do not concern you. What you have to do is this.
Stop, Gray. I don't want to know anything further. Whether you have told me is true or not true does not concern me. I entirely decline to be mixed up in your life. Keep your horrible secrets to yourself. They don't interest me anymore.
Alan, they will have interest to you. This one will have to interest you. I'm awfully sorry for you, Alan, but I can't help myself. You are the one man who is able to save me. I am forced to bring you into the matter. I have no option. Alan, you are scientific. You know about chemistry and things of that kind. You have made experiments. What have you got to do? What you have got to do is to destroy the thing that is upstairs. To destroy it so that not a vestige of it will be left. Nobody saw this person come into the house. Indeed, at the present moment, he is supposed to be in Paris. He will not be missed for months. When he is missed, there must be no trace of him found here. You, Alan, must change him. You must change him. And everything that belongs to him into a handful of ashes that I might scatter in the air.
You are mad, Dorian.
Ah, I was waiting for you to call me Dorian.
You are mad. I tell you. Mad to imagine that I would raise a finger to help you. Mad to make this monstrous confession. I will have nothing to do with this matter. Whatever it is. Do you think I'm going to peril my reputation for you? What is it? To me, what devil's work you are up to?
It was suicide, Alan.
I am glad of that. But who drove him to it? You, I should fancy.
Do you still refuse to do this for me?
Of course I refuse. I will have absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't care what shame comes. You deserve it all. I should not be sorry to disgrace. Publicly disgrace. How dare you ask of all men to mix myself up in this horror? I should have thought you knew more about people's character. Your friend Lord Henry Wharton can't have taught you much about psychology. Whatever else he has taught you, nothing will induce me to stir a step to help you. You've come to the wrong man. Go to some of your friends. Don't come to me.
Alan, it was murder. I killed him. You don't know what he had made me suffer. Whatever my life is, he had more to do with the making or the marring of it than poor Harry has had. He may not have intended it, but the result was the same.
Murder? Good God, Dorian. Is that what you have come to? I shall not inform upon it. It is not my business. Besides, without my stirring in the matter, you are certain to be arrested. Nobody ever commits a crime without doing something stupid. But I will have nothing to do with it.
You must have something to do with it. Wait a moment. Listen to me. Only listen, Alan. All I ask of you is to perform a certain scientific experiment. You go to the hospitals and dead houses, and the horrors that you do there don't affect you. If in some hideous dissecting room or fatigued laboratory you found this man lying on a leaden table with red gutters scooped out in it for the blood to flow through, you would simply look upon him as an admirable subject. You would not turn a hair. You would not believe that you were doing anything wrong. On the contrary, you would probably feel that you were benefiting the human race, or increasing the sum of knowledge in the world, or gratifying intellectual curiosity, or something of that kind. What I want you to do is merely what you have often done before. Indeed, to destroy a body must be far less horrible than what you are accustomed to work at. And remember, it is the only piece of evidence against me. If it is discovered, I am lost, and it is sure to be discovered unless you help me.
I have no desire to help you. Forget that. I am simply indifferent to the whole thing. It has nothing to do with me.
Alan, I entreat you. Think of the position I am in. Just before you came, I almost fainted with terror. You may know terror yourself some day. No, don't think of it. Don't think of that. Look at the matter purely from the scientific point of view. You don't inquire where the dead things on which you experiment come from. You don't inquire now. I have told you too much as it is, but I beg of you to do this. We were friends once, Alan.
Don't speak about those days, Dorian. They are dead.
The dead linger sometimes. The man upstairs will not go away. He is sitting at the table with bowed head and outstretched arms. Alan, Alan, if you don't come to my assistance, I am ruined. Why, they will hang me, Alan. Don't you understand? They will hang me for what I have done.
There is no good in prolonging the scene. I absolutely refuse to do anything in the matter. It is insane of you to ask.
You refuse?
Yes,
I entreat you, Alan.
it is useless.
The same look of pity came into Dorian Gray's eyes. Then he stretched out his hand, took a piece of paper, and wrote something on it. He read it over twice, folded it carefully, and pushed it across the table. Having done this, he got up and went over to the window. Campbell looked at him in surprise, and then took up the paper and opened it. As he read it, his face became ghastly pale, and he fell back in his chair. A horrible sense of sickness came over him. He felt as if his heart was beating itself to death in some empty hollow. After 2 or 3 minutes of terrible silence, Dorian turned round and came and stood behind him, putting his hand upon his shoulder. I am so sorry for you, Alan, he murmured. But you leave me no alternative. I have a letter written already. Here it is. You see the address? If you don't help me, I must send it. If you don't help me, I will send it. You know what the result will be. But you are going to help me. It is impossible for you to refuse now. I tried to spare you. You will do me the justice to admit that. You were stern, harsh, offensive. You treated me as no man has ever dared to treat me. No living man, at any rate. I bore it all. Now it is for me to dictate terms. Campbell buried his face in his hands, and a shudder passed through him. Yes, it is my turn to dictate terms, Alan. You know what they are. The thing is quite simple. Come, don't work yourself into this fever. The thing has to be done. Face it and do it. A groan broke from Campbell's lips, and he shivered all over. The ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece seemed to him to be dividing time into separate atoms of agony, each of which was too terrible to be borne. He felt as if an iron ring was being slowly tightened around his forehead, as if the disgrace with which he was threatened had already come upon him. The hand upon his shoulder weighed like a hand of lead. It was intolerable. It seemed to crush him. Come, Alan, you must decide at once.
I cannot do that,
He said mechanically, as though words could alter things. You must. You have no choice. Don't delay. He hesitated a moment.
Is there a fireplace in the room upstairs?
Yes. There is a gas fire with asbestos. Asbestos?
Oh, God.
That's deadly, guys!
Yeah.
Oh, man. Cancer. Call your
Damn.
lawyers.
I shall have to go home and get some things from the laboratory.
No, Ellen, you must not leave the house. Write out on a sheet of notepaper what you want, and my servant will take a cab and bring the things back to you. Campbell scrawled a few lines, blotted them, and addressed an envelope to his assistant. Dorian took the note up and read it carefully. Then he rang the bell and gave it to his valet, with orders to return as soon as possible and to bring the things with him. As the hall door shut, Campbell started nervously, and having got up from the chair, went over to the chimney-piece. He was shivering with a kind of ague. For nearly 20 minutes, neither of the men spoke. A fly buzzed noisily about the room, and the ticking of the clock was like the beat of a hammer. As the chime struck 1, Campbell turned around. and looking at Dorian Gray, saw that his eyes were filled with tears. There was something in the purity and refinement of that sad face that seemed to enrage him.
You are infamous. Absolutely infamous.
He muttered. Hush, Alan. You have saved my life, said Dorian.
Your life. Good heaven. What a life that is. You have gone from corruption, and now you have culminated crime in doing what I am going to do. What you forced me to do. It is not of your life that I am thinking.
Oh, Alan, murmured Dorian with a sigh. I wish you had 1,000th part of that pity for me that I have for you. He turned away, and as he spoke, and stood looking out at the garden. Campbell made no answer. After about 10 minutes, a knock came to the door, and the servant entered, carrying a large mahogany chest of chemicals with a long coil of steel and platinum wire and 2 rather curiously shaped iron clamps. Should I read this one?
Shall I leave the things here, sir?
He asked Campbell. Yes, said Dorian. I'm afraid, Francis, that I have another errand for you. What is the name of the man at Richmond who supplies Selby with orchids?
Harden, sir.
Yes, Harden. You must go down to Richmond at once. See Harden personally, and tell him to send twice as many orchids as I ordered, and to have a few white ones as possible. In fact, I don't want any white ones. It is a lovely day, Francis, and Richmond is a very pretty place. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother you about it.
No trouble, sir. At what time shall I be back?
Dorian looked at Campbell. How long will your experiment take, Alan? He said in a calm, indifferent voice. The presence of a third person in the room seemed to give him extraordinary courage. Campbell frowned and bit his lip.
It will take about 5 hours,
he answered. It will be time enough then. If you are back at 7:30, Francis. Or stay, just leave my things out for dressing. You can have the evening to yourself. I am not dining at home, so I shall not want you.
Thank you, sir,
said the man, leaving the room. Now, Alan, there is not a moment to be lost. How heavy this chest is! I'll take it for you. You bring the other things. He spoke rapidly and in authoritative manner. Campbell felt dominated by him. They left the room together. When they reached the top landing, Dorian took out the key and turned it in the lock. Then he stopped, and a troubled look came into his eyes. He shuddered. I don't think I can go in, Alan, he murmured.
It is nothing to me. I don't require you,
said Campbell, coldly. Dorian half opened the door. As he did so, he saw the face of his portrait leering in the sunlight. On the floor in front of it, the torn curtain was lying. He remembered that the night before he had forgotten, for the first time in his life, to hide the fatal canvas, and was about to rush forward when he drew back with a shudder. What was that loathsome red dew that gleamed wet and glistening on one of the hands as though the canvas had sweated blood? How horrible it was! More horrible, it seemed to him for the moment, than the silent thing that he knew was stretched across the table, the thing whose grotesque, misshapen shadow on the spotted carpet showed him that that it had not stirred, but it was still there, as he had left it. He heaved a deep breath, opened the door a little wider, and with half closed eyes, averted head, walked quickly in, determined that he would not look even once upon the dead man. Then, stooping down, taking up the gold and purple hanging, he flung it over the picture. There he stood, feeling afraid to turn around, and his eyes fixed themselves on the intricacies of the pattern before him. He heard Campbell bringing in the heavy chest, and the irons, and the other things that he had required for his dreadful work. He began to wonder if he and Basil Hallward had ever met, and if so, what they had thought of each other.
Leave me now,
said a stern voice behind him. He turned and hurried out, just conscious that the dead man had been thrust back into the chair, and that Campbell was gazing into a glistening yellow face. As he was going downstairs, he heard the key being turned in the lock. It was long after 7 when Campbell came back into the library. He was pale, but absolutely calm.
I have done what you have asked me to do.
He muttered.
And now, goodbye. Let us never see each other again.
You have saved me from ruin, Alan. I cannot forget that, said Dorian simply. As soon as Campbell had left, he went upstairs. There was a horrible smell of nitric acid in the room, but the thing that had been sitting at the table was gone. Damn. So that's how he got rid of the body?
Hey.
Bro, he's fucking crazy.
I would not want him to be a friend.
Nope.
Bro.
Horrible.
What a guy.
Oh, that guy was like so over Dorian.
Yeah.
Now he's beyond that. He's like, I hate this fucking guy.
Yeah. And I wonder what happened, like, what happened between them.
Cause did it sound like they fell out before he started to be that way? Like,
I don't know.
or,
I don't remember when he met him. I don't remember. Because there was him and then there was the other dude. Yeah, there was like two guys, and I don't remember.
so it is a curious thing if like, if they fell out before he became crazy, dark, or horrible, then it must have took a lot for him to be that cold.
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
I mean, it's curious because like if they fell out before, maybe Dorian wasn't the person. Maybe it was like in him to turn out that way. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that darkness.
What did he write in the paper?
Oh. I don't
His
know.
darkest secret.
Oh. Imagine, like, that's why Dorian gets close to people. Just to find out their darkest secret. And then when he needs them, he uses it against them.
Oh.
And that's why people were, like, wary of him.
Oh.
Because they didn't want him to find out their secret or something. Or, like, find out dirt about them.
Yeah.
Damn.
Wow. Revealing his true nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Well,
I
that was.
wonder
Oh.
how dark he will become.
Oh. True. True. Yeah. I mean, like, surely he can get worse than murder. Surely. I mean, he just did murder and blackmail back to back.
More murders?
More.
Maybe he'll.
Oh, he's a
Another.
serial
He's
killer.
a serial
Yeah.
killer. And his
What if?
excuse will be the painting made me do it.
Oh god. And is it actually? He is seeing that because Basil's seen it too, right?
Hmm?
Basil's seen
Oh, the
the.
change. The change in
Yeah.
the. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Basil saw the change in the picture. So it's something that's very real.
Ooh, I wonder. So like, I mean, it's kind of jumping ahead,
Mm-hmm.
but you think somebody will keep that painting? Like it,
Oh.
if Dorian's story comes to an end
Uh-huh.
somehow. I don't know. Maybe he dies or goes to jail, but maybe what do you call whatever power the painting or portrait has? Maybe draws people with like that dark side to like
Mm.
be attracted to it. What if somebody keeps it and like it'll never get destroyed?
Oh,
I
I
don't know.
see. If Dorian is away from it, then it itself will never, in a sense, age.
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
I don't know. Kind of just like a haunted object
Mm.
that like it'll last and just keep carrying throughout,
Right.
jumping to person to person. Crazy.
Hmm.
What would you do? What would you guys do if um like you didn't do anything um evil or anything like that,
Yeah.
but you have a self portrait
Mm-hmm.
and it slowly starts to change.
Burn
Like
it.
and you're just kind of
Burn it.
didn't
Burn it. No, I don't need that. If anything
yeah.
that changes that's not supposed to change, get rid of it.
hmm
Out.
Yep.
What if it's very subtle and you're like, no,
Get rid of it.
I can't.
Out.
Burning
Yeah.
it.
Burn it. It's like
Torch it.
it's like finding a house full of cockroaches. Leave.
Gotta burn the house
burn it.
down.
Burn the
There you
house
go.
down. That's it.
Yeah.
It's beyond saving.
Yeah.
Beyond saving. You might as well just start over.
hmm Wow. What if it comes back?
Lock it in a chest.
Like,
Do the Jumanji thing. Lock it in a chest. Throw it out to sea.
what if that'd be crazy if it what do you call that? If it'd be like one of those Edgar Allan Poe moments where you lock it up, but it has like a heartbeat.
Oh man. Like what's his name? That pirate dude in Pirates of the Caribbean. Caribbean.
Yeah.
Whatever they.
Davy Jones.
Yeah. Calypso. Man,
that
what an exciting chapter. I'm surprised he didn't murder Alan.
Me too.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna like kill him.
Yeah, he
When
was
he
getting
was-
real suspicious. He's just
Yeah.
like, you know, Alan, you really should
Mhm.
do this. You really should help me because I'm the one suffering here. Gosh, what a narcissist.
Mhm.
I thought he was gonna kill him when he touched his shoulder.
Oh yeah, that one. Where he's just
Yeah.
like, oh my dear friend, you have no idea what is about to await you. I did
Oh
it
god.
once. I shall do it again.
Man. I wonder
Hmm.
if Henry will enter the picture in the future chapters.
I hope so. Because like, I want to see if
He dies.
yeah, specifically from Dorian.
He
Specifically.
created
Right.
yeah.
Right. It's him and Basil. They both created
Yeah.
him. So, you know, how poetic would it be for the monsters to kill its master?
Yeah. Especially Henry. Because
Especially him.
he fucked up Dorian bad.
He did. With his, I don't know, with his psychology.
Yeah.
I don't think psychology messes you up that bad. He must be a terrible psychologist. If he even is one. He might just be saying stuff and like not really understanding what he's saying.
What is that? He's twisting thing.
Yeah.
It's a very Henry sucked.
Henry is something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, well. That was a good book club.
Oh. Yeah.